Hey, Evan Reese here. I'm going to walk you through today through some custom features that I've written for Onshape using FeatureScript that help with mesh workflows. If you haven't seen the previous video that I made of this boot, go back and watch that first. In that video, I walk through how to create a scan of an object and then bring it into Onshape and use it to create analytical geometry, not mesh geometry, that fits perfectly. So in this case, I modified and made this cover, and it fit exactly on my actual boot in real life. And I used all native features, at least for the main modeling part, and then I used my custom attractor pattern feature to get the holes on here. Yeah, and 3D printed it, fit great. But I've been kind of on a mesh kick lately and have also been not only exploring what I can do with the native feature set, but what FeatureScript can do with mesh in Onshape. And so throughout the process of exploring these, I've developed a number of features and utilities that have helped me work with meshes in Onshape. So I'm going to show those to you now, and then we'll walk through a demo of how to do some of these things. So the first one I want to show you is called Spline on Mesh. And this one takes mesh vertices as an input, and as soon as you pick one, it's going to populate the target mesh faces with whatever mesh face owns that vertex. But you can also change this, so the points don't have to be on the mesh. It'll kind of pull the curve from there to the mesh itself. So as soon as I've got 2 points, you can see we're going to get a curve that is on this mesh, and I can come and click all the way around and create a curve that is exactly on this mesh. So it's fitting right to it. And you'll notice that it is approximating it. And the reason for that is because this is kind of doing like a projected curve to the mesh. And FeatureScript right now only outputs a curve that is also somehow a mesh body. And really, like FeatureScript isn't really set up to handle that yet. So by approximating it, we get it back into analytical geometry land. It's now it's a B-spline again. So the approximation is not optional for this and some of the other tools that you're going to see in a second. But otherwise, the approximation dialog is pretty similar. So what that means here is that the yellow curve is the one that is truly the curve we wanted, the original mesh curve, and the magenta curve is the approximated one. And to get them closer, you can show the deviation here and show that it's about 3 millimeters off where it ought to be. So we can increase the point count on this and get that curve fitting a lot closer. So that's Spline on Mesh. And there's a couple of other tools to get curves onto meshes. I was wanting to use the normal project curve because I would typically do curve to face, and I would want to pick edges and just drop them right on here. And that's not an option with meshes. It just doesn't allow the selection. But I actually got into the code for those native features because you can go and look at all of the code for the extrude tool and everything and duplicate them, modify them, and do whatever you want. So I got in there and dug around and found that actually it's the interface of those features that prevents you selecting meshes, but the underlying functions work more or less. Now, there's probably a good reason that the development team hasn't exposed that so far. Like, they probably know that it's not ready for prime time, but that's fine for me. I am still getting some results that I can use out of it. And so until they do, the amount of rigor they need to do to launch something native, this is a good workaround. So I created a copy of the projected curve code and just changed very, very little. Same with intersection curve. So I have mesh projected curve. And for that one, here, I'll just grab that, this circle. So I can project that edge in the upward direction, and this allows me to select a mesh as a target. So same thing, I am forcing approximation for that, but it's a good way to get a controlled curve that follows a mesh very closely. And then the intersection curve, mesh intersection curve, behaves just the same way as you would expect it to. So I can grab the right plane, for example, and then this is going to fail because it's got too much going on here to try to actually map that out. So maybe this is the wrong plane to choose. If I had something simpler, that would work as well. So those are some good ways to get curves onto the surface of meshes. One other very quick feature that's kind of a quality of life thing more than anything, but it can add some stability to your models and isn't just for meshes, that I made is basically an inverted version of delete face. It's just I'm calling it keep face. It basically, instead of choosing what you want to get rid of, you choose what you want to keep. And the reason that I did that is because there are some times when, especially using constrained surface, as I'm doing here, where this gap between here and here is very close, and in some cases it will touch, and that will cause this to be more than one face. In other cases, it won't. And there are other times when you are splitting something and you have an indeterminate number of faces depending on what you're updating in your model. That was wordy. The point is you can use this to make it more robust to change. So there are certain cases where you want to say, I want to keep this and I want to get rid of everything else. And it doesn't matter how many other faces there are to get rid of. So keep face is a nice one. I'm going to link to all of these features in the video description. All right, yeah, so that's those. And to show the rest of these, I actually do want to walk through an example. Maybe you recognize this model. This is a fairly famous model. It's from the mid-90s. Actually, it's called the Stanford Bunny. And it's a 3D scan of a porcelain bunny that some researchers at Stanford created. And then it has since become a really classic benchmarking model for doing mesh work because it embodies a lot of the challenging cases that you run into with meshes. So it's kind of become a classic. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is walk through some of the scenarios where constrained surface might struggle a little bit more, and a couple of the workarounds that I've been coming up with for that. So I'm going to work on this ear. And one of the things that I've found is when I did the boot video previously, I had to split that mesh to break it into a sub face that I could use. And I really don't like splitting the mesh and kind of editing the original one. I'm not sure why I feel like that, but I think there's something tidy about having a new face to work on. So I'll show you how I did that. But first, I need an axis that's going to be a good datum for me to hang other geometry on. So for that, I'm going to use routing curve. I'm also more used to Freeform Spline, which is my custom feature that fills a similar niche to this one, but I'm trying to get used to routing curve, the native feature. So I'm going to add a point here at the tip of the ear, and I'm going to add a point around here, and then that point I'm going to scoot down. So what we're getting is an axis, and maybe I want this one to be slightly outside of the ear itself. So there we go. It's peeking out of the end, and I can scoot it around until I feel like this axis defines the center of this ear. We can always tweak it later in the model too. Okay. I think I want, this one's going to define a split eventually, so I'm going to scoot it a little bit. And I think there's a way for me to reorient this triad, but I don't have a good reference for that right now anyway, so I'm just going to scoot it around from a few angles and make sure that it's kind of still in the middle. All right, I'm happy with that. So now what we can do is drop some planes and things on here. And I actually really like my 3D points custom feature. I'll link to that one too. Because it has this planes option, and I'll probably introduce one for Make Connectors at some point too. I don't know, when I get around to it. And what I can do with this is, for the reference, I can grab this curve. And now I have a plane that I can slide on a curve like this, and I can add as many as I want. So this is a good way to make multiple planes in one go that are very interactive. Something like that. And I'm going to show this so that I can see where these planes are slicing through, because I will probably create some section curves through here at some point. All right, but we don't need to see those yet. Maybe we'll hide all of these and keep this first one. So another custom feature that I've written for mesh work, getting back to what I was talking about earlier, why I don't like to split my original reference mesh, is mesh, copy, and split. Not creatively named, but very straightforwardly named. The faces to split is going to be this. And again, from the previous video, I do like to box select to get the mesh. Right now I'm just clicking and it's not getting it. I think because it's not set up to select vertices, but it's also kind of trying to select the vertices. So you can also like zoom way in and grab a triangle, but box select will do it. All right, so the entity to split with. This feature, again, is another one where I copied most of the code from the native split feature. So I let the development team do a lot of the heavy lifting, and then I just modified it to my liking. So the entity to split with will be this plane. And if we complete the feature right now, what you'll see is we didn't split the original. It made a copy of it and then split that. But we can take this a step further, and I added this side to keep query field. And on that, you choose a vertex that's on the side you want to keep. So anything on this side of the ear will be good. And now I have just the ear isolated, and the original mesh is not modified in any way. So that's tidy in a way that I like. All right, so let's talk about trying to recreate something like this. If we were to make something that is going to fit this exactly, there's a couple of approaches that I might take. And I think I would recommend to everybody, if you're trying to do this and convert a mesh to an approximate analytical geometry, like NURBS geometry, surface geometry, I think constrained surface is great. That's the native feature. But it's going to struggle in this case, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I go mesh and grab this whole face, it's going to fail. And it's going to fail for a few reasons. I think the main reason is that this is a closed surface, and constrained surface, to my knowledge, cannot handle that. Another reason it's going to fail is just because it's being asked to do a lot. So the tolerance is low. Like, I think it would probably fail anyway. So you can crank the tolerance, but I don't think any amount of tolerance is going to help us here. So another feature that I wrote as a sort of convenience to myself as I was getting to know constrained surface is extract mesh points. And what that will let us do is pretty self-explanatory. You can click a mesh, and it will bring out all of the points on that mesh. And when I complete it, you can see we have these selectable points. If I hide the mesh, now we have all of these points. I'm going to hide this curve as well. And the reason this is relevant is because with constrained surface, you cannot box select mesh vertices, but you can box select these. Let me show you. So if I have this, and I want to, I can't choose the whole mesh. That's going to fail. And so I want to start to pick points and see where it breaks. And diagnose why it's failing, maybe get a clue. This is going to be too tedious. I'm not going to do it that way. So I made this feature so that then I can come in with constrained surface and begin to select sections like this and figure out what's causing all of the problems. In this case, that surface is looking quite lumpy, which I suppose makes sense. The mesh is lumpy too. So I might loosen the tolerance and give it some more breathing room. You may want to Shift C while you're working with this feature to show the curvature combs and see how smooth it is or isn't as you go. Let me do the tolerance back down to 0.01 and show you what I mean. See how that's showing us that the surface is very not fair, not smooth. So if we give it more flexibility, then it will be smoother and more successful. So that's extract mesh points. I want to point out, though, that this is a diagnostic tool, not a modeling tool. This is an expensive feature. It's almost 5 seconds to pull these points out, so don't use it for modeling. Use it to diagnose what you need to diagnose, and then suppress it or delete it, get it out of there. It should not stay active in your tree. All right, but in this case, I know that we're not going to be able to represent this with constrained surface as is. So what I'm going to do instead is use 2 constrained surfaces. And to split this, I'm going to use spline on mesh. And I can use this to draw a reasonable seam right on the mesh. And I just love that FeatureScript gives me the ability to to make Onshape more my own. You know, I can make things that work the way that my mind works and the way that my workflow has to work, because the challenge, you know, or I guess the expectation that a tool is going to meet everyone's needs right out of the box is kind of just not going to happen. Is never going to happen. And so it's great that Onshape foresaw that and built in FeatureScript to let us customize to our liking and to our particular needs. So here's that. I'm going to turn on the curvature combs for this, and I can see, like, let me hide some things so we can look at it together. See how the comb is kind of jaggy like that? If that's because this is a degree 3. So if I turn the degree up, I'll get a smoother curve. And it doesn't have to be right on the mesh, because when I use the split command, it'll kind of pull it to the mesh. So I'd actually be more concerned with getting a smooth curve, potentially. Now I want it to be fairly close, and I don't care too much about the smoothness, so maybe I'm overthinking it here. All right, what I didn't like is this at the end, so I'm just gonna. I liked how that looked with 15. It's a little wobbly, but you know, it's not going to matter too much for what I'm doing. Okay, so now I have that curve right there on the surface, and I want to make sure that it actually extends out a little bit, and you'll see why in a bit. So there's a few ways I might do that. I could grab Edit Curve and edit this curve and move this endpoint around. And I could do that to a reference, I suppose. That might be a good way to go. It's a little tricky because I can't really reorient this, and I would love to be able to do that so that I can drag it straight out. But another workaround that I have been doing is to use my Freeform Spline feature and add a vertex. The first one's going to be right there, and the second one is actually going to reference, I'm going to use a make connector on this curve. So once I moused over the curve, it's highlighting. I'm going to hold shift so that it doesn't inference and anything else. And I'm going to grab a make connector right on the end of that curve, and then I can move the make connector itself. It's a bit of a hack. I don't love this solution. I would really like to add to Freeform Spline. I've got several ideas for improvements, and this is one of them, the ability to drag a point right off the end of a curve to extend it tangent. But this works. It's just a little bit too many clicks for my liking. Okay, shift enter to call Freeform Spline again, referencing that point, referencing that make connector, and in this case I can see, because the blue axis, well, it's really tough to see with that gimbal there, but the blue axis is going to the right, so that's my Z, and I need to go negative this time. The other one was positive, you might have noticed. Okay, great. And then if I want to combine these, I can use the 3D Fit Spline through edges, and I hope that this will work. Great. Cool. And then just because I like to work a little more tidy, I'm going to delete these. I wish there was an option to just get rid of those right here in the tool. Same with edit curve. When you have a chain, I wish there was an option to just delete the inputs. That would be nice for how I would like to work. And I suppose the nice thing again is I can copy the code and make that feature myself if I really care that much. But I think that would make sense as part of the native feature set Onshape if you're listening. Okay, now we can split this using the normal split feature, face split. And I'm going to split with that curve normal to target. Great. Now this has been split into 2 halves, and this is going to be a little more friendly to our friend constrained surface. And it's still failing because the tolerance is so tight. Let's try 0.1. Turn on curvature to see what that looks like. Kind of hairy. Let's try 1. Oh, that's way nicer, but it's not quite as accurate as I'd like it to be. Maybe 0.5. Yeah, that's good. When you see this kind of like almost camo, that lets you know that the mesh and the surface are both in very close proximity. 0.4 millimeters, sure. Let's say that we're cool with that. I mean, we could do this 0.3. It's a little funky. So yeah, we can play with this stuff until we're happy. I'm gonna shift enter and we'll do the other side. Let's just roll with it. All right, so now we have these two surfaces. I'm gonna hide the mesh. And both of these, follow those halves. And here we could do a few things. Mutual trim comes to mind. I'm not sure if that'll do what I'm after, but I'm actually going to use the split command and split both of these faces using this curve again, normal to target. Then I can use my keep face and keep both of these. And these also got over trimmed a little bit, or on this side. So let me see where that plane is. Yeah, they're both past the plane. So I'm going to split them with that as well. This time I'm splitting parts with that plane, not keeping both sides. Flip it. Great. So now I've got this fairly clean thing going on. Next, I want to create a little gap between these, and there's a couple of ways to do that as well. One way would be to create some kind of swept round thing on this curve. My custom wire feature can do that, or profile sweeper is another custom feature of mine that can do that. And can I select these? I cannot. So I'm going to do a new body. This can be whatever I want it to be. And then I can use the Boolean tool on subtract with this as the tool and this as the targets. And that sliced away that section. So that's one approach. I'm going to just suppress that and try one other approach. Shift P to hide the curves, and I'm going to go move boundary. And I want to move these two edges, or I guess those two surfaces. Let's see. Let's grab the edges. That's an edge, and I'm going to do the tilde key for select other to grab the other edge. And we want to only move it like 2 millimeters, let's say, and flip the direction. So that's another way to create a setback. Now that's looking funky right there. Let's see if changing this to 1 is better. I don't love this little ripple because we're going to try and loft or boundary surface or something between these two to smooth them out and connect them. And I don't know, that little jog is looking a little funky. So let me suppress this and see if the other solution looked any better. Yeah, I think this is going to give us a better result. Let's try it. I'm going to go with a boundary surface. U profiles, and that's working so far. Let's see if it'll let us, oh, not tangent direction, match tangent is what we want, and match tangent. It's really thinking about it. And then because it's still kind of flat-ish, I might try and crank up the magnitude on these and see if we can round it out a little more. Whenever I do something that's kind of, feels like it ought to be fairly simple and the wheel spins like that for a while, I know I'm like pushing my luck. But let's go with it. Yeah, so this one's not tangent. I've got my view cube set up, tangent edges set to phantom. So the dotted lines are showing me that that is tangent, and this one is showing me that it really tried its hardest. And I'm proud of you for trying. All right, let's try another way. Loft. And we'll match tangent. This is very similar. Loft seems to be having a more fun doing this than boundary surface did. It's I am not an expert at knowing which one is going to be more happy. So often find myself trying each and seeing which one does better. I don't love the wibbly wobblies here. If I wanted, I would come in and create a bridging curve between these and use it as a guide so that we have a nice, nicely trimmed thing. Or perhaps I can try a move boundary on these edges and then trim it back to that plane So these are two workarounds. Split again this part with that plane. Don't keep both sides and flip it. That works as well. So look at that. We've got this ear now modeled as analytical geometry. And so you could finish it off with like a fill feature, but I actually have a custom feature that I made that's just basically does a fill. It's called cap surface. So if you have a surface and there's any open edges, like if I highlight boundary edges here, these ones will be red. So it'll find all those and then just do a fill. So in this case, I can just click the surface and it will cap it off, make a solid, and you can choose the continuity there. So yeah, that's how I would approach an area like that. That's going to be challenging with just a constrained surface. But I think with some of these workflows and some of the custom features that I've got, it gets more convenient. All right, I hope you found that very useful and that it unlocks more capabilities for you if you're working with meshes in Onshape. And I hope that you learned the real moral of the story, which is that FeatureScript is a fantastic tool for customizing Onshape to work the way that you need to work. And I love that they had the foresight to introduce that ability from the beginning. It's very fundamental to how Onshape works. So kudos to them. And I guess I just want to call out again that a lot of these features are really easy. Keep face is like, very short. It's not much code. And a lot of the other ones, I've modified the native features because they've made all that code available. So some of these were a heavier lift and some of them were pretty straightforward once you know just the basics. All right. The links to these features are in the description of the video. If you use them or would recommend changes to them for how you work, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.